In this video, we will look at how to do custom data validation. Last week, we saw how to do data annotations. You can see here I have my student in my enrollment application. So we added required fields, string length, and other data annotations. But if you have a requirement, for example, which does not meet, if you have a requirement that does not quite pertain to any of the available data annotations, like for example, you want to do something very customized for your application, but you do not have any pre-built data validations available for that. Okay, in that situation, you would want to go for custom data validation. So the beauty of MVC is that it lets you extend its core functionality. So you can pretty much write about anything that you want. So instead of required here, you can make up your own data annotation. So I can make something here called or something like that. Okay. See, currently it gives me an error because there is no code that matches this particular attribute. Every single one of these, they are attributes. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So when you go here, right click and go into peak definition, you can see the code or the class behind this, right? So required attribute. Just scroll a little bit more, you can see in system.component.model.data annotations, that is the namespace, we have a class called required attribute, and it is derived from validation attribute. This is the class. If you want to make your own data validations, data annotations, you have to derive a class from this class called validation attribute. And you have to override this one method. Okay, this is the method that validates your field. So you have to override this method. So that is how all the code is done. So we are looking at metadata, so we really can't look at the code as to how everything is written. You can just see the a basic signature of all the methods that are available. Okay, so the first order of business is you have to derive your class from validation attribute. Okay, so if you want minimum age to work, it does not exist today. That's why you're seeing an error. But if you want this to work, you have to have a class by this name, and it should be derived from validation attribute. Okay, so before we go into it, let me show you something. I added a field called age. Okay, and what I did is I added this field to my student view, to my create, details, index, and edit views. Then I added it to the student controller, to my bindings, right? So it is there in my bindings. After that, I went into my tools, NuGet package manager console. See, you can see here, I did my add migration. I did the add migration and I ran the database update. So those are two steps you have to do every time you make a change to your model. So if you can see here, I have an update here for 10.5 and it has age. Okay, and my database has been updated. So that is where I am right now. So please do all these steps. Whenever you add a field, first step is add it to the data bindings in your controller. Okay, see, age is there in my bindings in the controller. Second step, add it to your views. Okay, see, I have age here. Okay, that is the second step. Third step is to do a data migration, right? Code first migration. So make sure that you go to your console, tools, NuGet package manager, do the two steps, add migration, and then give the name. After you're done with that, say update database. Okay, these are all required, otherwise you will get errors. Okay, so now let's go back to what we wanted to do. We wanted to do the minimum age as one of the validation parameters. So I want something here called and it should take some input. Okay, this is what I want to make work. This is going to be a custom data annotation. Okay, so I'm commenting it here because if I open it now, it's going to error out because I do not have a class called minimum age that derives from validation attribute. Go to your models, say add class. Let's call it as minimum age attribute. Okay, all attributes, generally it is preferred that you give that attribute in the name. Okay, because we want to derive from the validation attribute, you have to include system.date component model.data annotations, and then here you come and derive your class from validation attribute. Okay, now you do a control click. That will generate a constructor for you. This is going to be your default constructor. Okay, then we can start typing as protected override. So when you do this and scroll to the next space, the IntelliSense will show you whatever method that is available in the validation attribute that you can override. So the only method here is valid. So when I clicked on that, so it's like this. Let me show you one more time. Override. See, it shows that. Click on that, double click, and then it gives you the method to override. So first things first. So let's look at the input, the parameters here. This is the object value, and then you have the validation context. Okay. Anytime you're not sure what this means, you can always right click, go inside, peak definition, and you can see that. So there is a constructor called validation attribute. There is one that takes error message. You can kind of look at all the methods that are available. Okay, so the things that we are concerned about, the input parameters, these two. This value is going to be the value of your field. So this will be the value of the age. Okay, it is an object, not an integer. So you have to make the conversion. Next thing is validation context. This is going to have a copy of your object itself. So any specific anything specific for an object like display name, type of object, all those things you can get from this particular object, and we will be using it, so we can look at it. Okay, so now let's just make it to return. If everything is good, we want to return validation result dot success. So that is inbuilt into this class. Okay, if everything is fine. So let's do a tiny validation here. If value is not null, check for age less than minimum age. So this is what we are going to do. Okay, anytime, we check for minimum age, right? So let us define a variable that will hold the minimum age. Let's make it read only. Okay. Now, if you go back to the student class, you can see we want this to be an input. We want the user to say it. We don't want to hard code it. I can say minimum age equal to 20 here, but that's not what we want. We want the whoever is using this attribute to define that. So we are going to take this as an input. The only place you would take it as an input is in this constructor. Okay, constructor, we are getting the parameter in the constructor, and this is our